always believed in miracles.
Greater protection for people of religious faith.
Every single proposal for protection of religious freedoms was voted down today.
I think the coalition is facing a tough sell on this bill over the next few months, and that's because church leaders want religious freedom protection.
Are we going to impose more threats and violence on our streets if we give that religious freedom to an ideology that I believe is political?
Without religious liberty, we are doomed.
Ban the burqa in Australia.
The first serious bit of legislation that the new government puts into this parliament is for the most radical abortion laws in this country.
Go and buy some non-halal Easter eggs and chocolate and have a happy Easter, everyone.
Leaders, as we've seen in recent times, come and go, but I think your faith hopefully is forever.
We are an amazing country of amazing people. God bless Australia.
Hello and welcome to Faith and Politics. I'm your host for this video, Reverend Jake Zabel of the St. John's Evangelical Lutheran Church located in Dalby, Queensland, Australia, a member congregation of the Confessional Orthodox Evangelical Lutheran Communion. Now, Faith and Politics is a podcast where I normally interview different politicians about their religious views and their political views. Today's episode is going to be a very different one. It's not going to be an interview, it's just going to be me talking about a particular topic. And the reason I'm doing that is because I think this is a very important topic that needs to be discussed. Particularly, as I just mentioned before, I'm a pastor here in Queensland, and we have a state election coming up at the end of this month on October 31st, also Reformation Day. I'm hoping that as we celebrate the Reformation of the church, we can also celebrate a reformation of the Queensland government. We've had the Labor government in charge of Queensland for 2 terms now. It's just been, in my opinion, a disaster. As somebody who also lives on a farm, there's all these Labor green tree clearing prohibitions which have not helped farmers one bit. Labor is very kind of urban focused and hasn't really done a lot to help the rural communities. But the biggest problem Labor has done for Queensland is give us abortion, and they're on track now to try and give us euthanasia. There is a bill being discussed now in Parliament. I think Labor was hoping to try and get it through before the upcoming election. I don't think that's going to happen. So really, this election coming up will be the decision as to whether we get euthanasia or not. If Labor wins, we're getting euthanasia. If the LNP wins, hopefully we don't get euthanasia, but it could be a possibility. That is what I'm going to discuss in this episode. So in the lead up to this election, I would like to discuss Queensland politics and pro-life policies. So while there are numerous little minor parties running for election in Queensland, I'm only going to talk about 6 main parties. There's the 2 main parties, the Labor and the Liberal National Party, and then there's kind of 4 minor parties that seem to usually win seats in federal elections and state elections. And so this will be the Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party, commonly known as One Nation. There's the Qatar Australia Party, commonly just referred to as the Qatar Party or KAP sometimes. There's the Greens Party, and lastly there is the United Australia Party, formerly the Palmer United Party. The Palmer Party doesn't have any seats at the moment in Queensland, although they're hoping to win some in the upcoming election. One Nation has 1 seat, the Qatar Party has 3 seats, the Greens have 1 seat, and then the rest of it is divided up between Labor and Liberals, although there is also the new North Queensland First Party, which was started by a man who had left the Liberal National Party over, I don't know exactly what the issues were. It was a whole complicated, but he left the Liberal National. He's now formed the North Queensland First Party. I'm not sure how popular they are up there. We'll see if they win any more seats in this upcoming election. I'm not going to be talking much about them today just because they're kind of a new party. They're not well known. They're not very popular. Whereas One Nation, Qatar, Palmer and Greens, why they may be minor parties, they've been around for quite some time. People know about them. They're always in the media. So they are well-known parties. So I'm going to be discussing them. So basically, I'm going to start by going the least pro-life parties to the most pro-life parties. So to start with, the least pro-life parties in Queensland are Labor and the Greens. They have pushed through abortion during this last term of the Labor Party. That's the second term of Anastasia Palaszczuk. They've managed to get abortion through, which now has abortion for any reason up to 22 weeks. And beyond 22 weeks, as long as you get 2 doctors to sign off on it, you can still get an abortion all the way up to birth. There isn't any care for babies that are born alive from botched abortions. There's no painkillers for aborted babies. There's no prohibitions on sex selection abortion. So prior to 22 weeks, a woman, if she didn't want to have a son or a daughter, she could just go and get her baby aborted because it's the wrong gender. And then even after 22 weeks, as long as she could get 2 doctors to sign off, she could still probably get her baby aborted for just, gender, sex-based reasons. So this is quite a bad policy. It's one of the worst abortion policies in Australia. It mirrors the Victorian policies because we basically just copied what Victoria has done. And so those are like the 2 states in Australia that have the worst abortion policies. Luckily, down in New South Wales, when they recently passed abortion down there, the Senate was able to block it a bit and get some reform done on it. That's thanks to One Nation and the shooters, farmers and fishers down there who were able to swing the vote and block the abortion bill down there in the Senate. So that's why New South Wales isn't as bad as Queensland or Victoria. The other states have also got bad policies as well. Basically, every state in Australia now has abortion. So, looking at this, where are the parties in Queensland headed? Are there any parties trying to make abortion worse? Are there any parties trying to abolish abortion? Well, that's what we're going to discuss here. So, question as to, is there any parties trying to make abortion worse? Well, the Greens and Labor really just want kind of on-demand abortion for any reason at any time. They haven't really been pushing any new policies per se to make abortion worse in Australia. However, I have a statement here released, it's a media release and public statement by the Qatar party regarding Labor's proposed abortion policy. This was released on the 18th of March 2019. And so it says here that federal Labor, so this is not the state Labor of Queensland, but the federal Labor government, they are threatening to withdraw health funding from states if they do not force public hospitals to perform abortions. So basically, regardless of what state laws say, the Labor government federally wants to make it a binding law that public hospitals have to do abortions or they're going to lose their federal funding from the federal government. And that is absolutely diabolical. This is basically the federal Labor government trying to basically blackmail states into having to have abortion laws. Because if Queensland abolished abortion, but the federal government passed laws that says that they wouldn't get federal funding without having abortions provided in the hospitals, then the state of Queensland would lose federal funding to our public hospitals. So while the Labor and the Greens statewide haven't put any new policies out to make abortion worse, the federal government of Labor is trying to blackmail states into having abortion, which is really good that the Liberal National Coalition won the last federal election and that we currently have a Liberal National Prime Minister rather than a Labor Prime Minister, because the situation would be much worse if we had a Labor government under who would have been Bill Shorten if he had won the election, but he lost and so we're better off. Labor and Greens also considering pro-life. Pro-life is not just abortion policies, but this also includes issues like euthanasia. As I said, Labor, supported by the Greens, is currently trying to get euthanasia through. So the Labor Party is very anti-life. They're not pro-life. They've brought in abortion. They trying to make it, easier for women to abort babies. They're trying to bring in euthanasia. Labor and the Greens are not pro-life. Now, the next party I want to talk about is Palmer's party, or officially the United Australia Party. I don't know what their policies are. I have researched, I've searched their website, I've searched throughout the internet. Palmer doesn't really have a comprehensive policy regarding either abortion or pro-life, abortion or euthanasia. So they're kind of a big blank nothing when it comes to pro-life. I don't know if they're for abortion. I don't know if they're against abortion. I don't know what their views are on euthanasia. We don't really know where Palmer is on this matter. So basically he's a blank. We'll just move on then to the more pro-life parties. And so we're going to start with the least pro-life and move towards the most pro-life. And so the least pro-life here is the Liberal National Party. And so the Liberal National Party, we're going to start with the issue of abortion. So the Liberal National Party said that if they win this upcoming election, they are going to do a, quote, review into the abortion policy. Now, what does a review look like? It's basically they're going to look into it and then see if they need to adjust the policies or not. So there is no confirmation necessary from the Liberal National Party that they will fix the Labor abortion policy. They have actually said they are not going to recriminalise abortion. So in Queensland, prior to this bill, abortion was actually a criminal offence under the Queensland Criminal Code, although there were some exceptions within the Criminal Code where, due to certain circumstances, and if you got doctor approval and blah, 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 a woman still could get abortion. So abortion was still possible in Queensland, but it was officially a crime in Queensland prior to the Labor abortion bill getting passed. The Liberal National have said that they are committed to not recriminalising abortion. So they've actually said they are not criminalising it. They are not going to do away with abortion, and so that actually makes them kind of not pro-life. They're kind of pro-life light, really light. They haven't actually guaranteed that they're going to undo the Labor policy. Many individual politicians in the Liberal National Party have said that they want to see amendments made to the Labor abortion bill, but there is no official confirmation from the Liberal National Party that they will undo Labor's abortion bill. They're going to do a review into this, and this is very soft language. It's we're going to have a look about it, we're going to have a think, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. So, yeah, Liberal Nationals is more pro-life than Labor, but there's no confidence necessary with Liberal Nationals. So, go ahead and vote for Liberal Nationals rather than Labor. They're going to be a better government for Queensland. They will be slightly more pro-life, but they haven't guaranteed to actually fix the abortion problems brought in by Labor. However, regarding euthanasia as well, the Liberal National Party has said that with a vote on euthanasia, they are going to allow a conscience vote. So the Liberal National Party is not taking a strict stand on euthanasia either, but allowing each individual politician to vote how they feel fit. Which is good for some of the more conservative Liberal National members, such as Mark Robinson, who's a Pentecostal pastor. I've had him on a previous episode of Faith and Politics. Go back and listen to that one. It's a very good episode. He probably will vote against euthanasia. Several other politicians I can probably think who would as well. But there's also a bunch of Liberal National politicians who'd probably vote in favour of things like abortion and euthanasia. So this is often the problem when you have a conscience vote, is that, sure, you're not telling the Conservatives that they have to vote for it, but you're also not telling the, progressive members that they have to vote against it. And so, yeah, when we ask where is Liberal Nationals in regards to pro-life issues, they're really kind of in the middle. They aren't committed to getting rid of it. There's certain individuals in the Liberal National Party that kind of are personally committed to getting rid of abortion and stuff like that, but the party as a whole is not committed to getting rid of abortion. They've actually said they're committed to not recriminalising it. The best resource I can recommend for this is go and listen to Dave Pello's The Good Source podcast. Particularly, you want to go to Pello Talk Live, episode 26. This was on September 23rd, 2020. So these is how you can find the episode. And particularly, go to roughly around an hour 46 into the episode, and there you'll have Dave Pallo discussing with a Liberal National politician about the Queensland policy in regards to abortion in the upcoming election. So that's a very good resource I would recommend you go and listen to. You'll listen to the politician there explain that Liberal National Party is committed to not recriminalising abortion. They are doing a review in it. They would like to try and amend some of the Labor issues with their bill, but they're not committed necessarily to doing that. So I repeat, if you want to listen to that interview, go to the good source and go to Pallo Talk Live episode 26, which is dated to September 23rd, 2020. So the next party I want to talk about, and this is actually a very interesting party, is the One Nation Party. So One Nation, they actually have kind of been in favour of things like abortion and euthanasia in the past. We're going to talk about euthanasia in a second, but we're going to talk now about One Nation's policy regarding abortion. Again, if you want to listen to a good resource, go and listen to the good source again. Go to Pallo Talk Live, but this time go to episode 21, which was on August 18th, 2020, and go to about 2 hours 17 minutes into the conversation where Dave Pallo interviews Pauline Hanson, the leader of One Nation, about One Nation's recent abortion policies. That's a very good thing to talk about there. There you'll find that Pauline Hanson does say that she is not committed to criminalising abortion. She's got nothing against abortion in general. What her biggest issue is the sex selection, the lack of painkillers, the late-term abortions, and stuff like that. I believe she kind of talks a bit about the concept of, early abortions prior to finding a heartbeat. So One Nation may possibly put forth something like a heartbeat bill, which would mean that once a heartbeat can be detected, you can't abort the baby. So that's about 6 weeks, they reckon. So therefore, you can only abort a baby within the first 6 weeks or so. That's not an official One Nation policy. That's just something they've kind of talked about. I will read to you now the official One Nation Right to Life policy. They have gone and done an extensive policy regarding abortion in Queensland, and this is the One Nation policy regarding abortion and what amendments they want to see made to the Labor bill in the Queensland Parliament. So this is the official One Nation Right to Life policy. They have 8 points that they want to see amendments made to the Queensland abortion bill. So the One Nation point 1 is that they want to reduce the gestational limits for abortion. So currently, you can basically abort a child up to the day of birth. Like I said, the official Labor bill is that up to 22 weeks, it's for any reason. Beyond 22 weeks, as long as you get 2 doctors to sign off, then you can abort a baby up to, day of birth, pretty much. So One Nation wants to see reduction on the gestational limits for abortion. So One Nation is kind of pushing for only early-term abortions. They want to abolish late-term abortions. Point 2 is that One Nation wants to ban sex-selective abortion, so that you can't abort a baby just because it's the wrong sex. You can't abort it because it's a son or a daughter. That's not a legit reason to get a baby aborted. Point 3 is that they want to implement counselling and other safeguards. So at the moment, there isn't any real pre-abortion counselling and safeguards for women in Queensland. One Nation wants to implement them. So as they say here, they say women who may be considering an abortion must be provided counselling and compassionate assistance. The next one is medical care for babies born alive during abortion. So this is probably one of the most important policies that need to be passed in Queensland. So at the moment, if a baby gets attempted abortion in Queensland and then it's born alive as part of the botched abortion, In Queensland, they just let the baby die. They don't care for it. They don't provide it any medical treatment. They don't provide it basic bare essentials for human survival. They just let it die. And so this is no longer abortion. This is now infanticide. And so One Nation wants to ban that. And I think every party needs to be on board to banning that. In Australia, if a woman has a miscarriage at 22 weeks, from 22 weeks on, if there's a miscarriage, you have to get a death certificate because it's considered a legal person under Australian law. Yet, if that child is born due to a botched abortion, they will just leave it to die. And it doesn't get a death certificate. It's just treated as nothing. So this is absolutely abominable in Queensland, and so we need to fix this. Point 5 of One Nation is that they want to anathematise babies that are being aborted. So as it says here on the One Nation policy, studies have shown that from about 16 weeks on in labour, babies can feel pain. And so, as I mentioned before, in Queensland, you can abort a baby up to 22 weeks for any reason, and then after that, if you get doctor approval. But a baby can feel pain from about 16 weeks. So from 16 weeks to 22 weeks, a woman can still abort a baby for any reason, and that baby will feel that abortion. It will feel that pain. And it doesn't get anathematized. And so that's a painful death for this child. One Nation wants to make it law that any baby aborted has to be anathematized. They have to have painkillers. Labor is pushing for this euthanasia bill where we have to give all these, peaceful, painless deaths to people that are terminally ill, yet they don't want to give the same kind of treatment to unborn children in the womb. The next point on the One Nation policy is that I want to restore doctors' rights. So at the moment, the Labor bill does not allow doctors to conscientiously object to it. So if a doctor, because of conscientious reasons, doesn't want to abort a baby, too bad, you have to in Queensland. Otherwise they can face fines and stuff like that. So they are forced by the government to go against conscience and abort babies. And so One Nation wants to give doctors those rights to object if for conscience reasons. The point 7 of the One Nation Right to Life policy is to ban organ harvesting. So they want to make sure that there's laws put in place to prevent the organs of aborted babies being basically, sold on the black market pretty much, but not necessarily the black market. But people will know if they've looked into the disgusting practices of Planned Parenthood in America with the sale of unborn child's organs and stuff over in America. So yeah, we want to make sure that is criminalised and banned in Australia, particularly in Queensland here. And then lastly, the 8th point for the One Nation policy is to improve data reporting. This basically just wants to make sure that there's proper record keeping, that everything is above board, that there's no dodgy, corrupt kind of things going on because paperwork hasn't been properly kept. So that is what the One Nation policy is in regard to abortion. Now, the next one is One Nation's policy in regard to euthanasia. And this one is interesting because actually, once upon a time, One Nation was very pro-euthanasia. There's a little kind of article story from Pauline Hanson from 2013 where she goes into her full-on support for euthanasia and how much, they're all pro-euthanasia. If you just simply Google One Nation euthanasia policy, you'll find numerous things. For example, there's a Sky News report from June 2019 where One Nation leader Pauline Hanson says that One Nation is all aboard for euthanasia. This was when Victoria was discussing euthanasia bills in Victoria. However, if you look at the current news articles, you'll find that One Nation in Queensland has actually come out as anti-euthanasia, that they are planning to block any kind of euthanasia bill put forth by Labor. So, yeah, where does One Nation stand on euthanasia? That's a good question. It's a little bit unclear. Sometimes they're for it, sometimes they're against it. Possibly they pick a side based on what is most politically beneficial for them rather than what they personally believe. But that's just speculation. All I know is that the Queensland One Nation has said that they're not going to support euthanasia bills in Queensland put forth by Labor. So now, before we get to the last party that I'm going to talk about today, I'm just going to give a quick recap of where the parties sit. So, Greens, Labor, pro-choice, anti-life, pro-abortion, pro-euthanasia, want really bad policies. They are, late-term abortions, not good. Palmer, no idea where he sits, doesn't have any public policies on this. LNP and One Nation both seem to be against late-term abortions, but don't seem to have a problem with early-term abortions, and have both said that they're not going to recriminalise abortion. So neither of those parties are going to do away with abortion altogether. And in regards to euthanasia, LNP is allowing a conscience vote, so it really depends on what individual politicians get elected, and One Nation seems to flip-flop on the issue all the time, so you can't really have a guarantee as to where One Nation will go. Now, this leads us to the last party, and this is the Qatar Australian Party. So there is a group called Cherish Life. They are a pro-life, anti-abortion lobbyist group here in Queensland. So that's Cherish Life, just to really emphasize their name. I'd recommend you go and research them, check them out. I've interviewed on previous podcasts for my show, not Faith and Politics, but on a different podcast I've interviewed 2 different people from Cherish Life regarding the Queensland abortion bills when they first came in. So yeah, Cherish Life is a good organisation I'd recommend you check out if you are pro-life and against abortion or euthanasia. But they have called the Qatar Party the most pro-life party in Queensland. Probably the most pro-life party in Australia. And this is actually true when you look at the Qatar policies. So the question is, what are the Qatar policies regarding abortion and euthanasia? Well, if you go to the Qatar website, you won't be able to find anything, because the Qatar parties have made a point of not having social issues being a particular policy for their party. So if you look at the Qatar party website, you'll find that their policies have to do things with like farming, mining, infrastructure, trade, tourism, different political things. They don't put social issues on their website. However, the Qatar Party has said that they are founded on Christian values. The traditional Judeo-Christian Western values is what the Qatar Party was founded on. And they've also said in numerous interviews that they do make it a requirement for candidates who are going to run for their party to be pro-life, to be against abortion, and to be against euthanasia. So even though their website doesn't have any official public policies on abortion and euthanasia, they have made a point of only running candidates that are pro-life, anti-abortion, anti-euthanasia. Regarding euthanasia, Qatar has said that they are going to vote against any Labor bill, and they've said they are not in favour of euthanasia. Now, in regards to abortion, they have actually made a statement on this, and this is what I read to you before. It's a statement which was written on March 18th, 2019, titled "A Media Release and Public Statement by Qatar's Australia Party Regarding Labor's Proposed Abortion Policy." So, as I read before, the introduction to this statement talks about how federal Labor wants to cut funding to public hospitals in Australia that don't perform abortions. And so the statement goes on where Qatar says they oppose this, they reject what Labor says, but what is most important is the bottom statement from the Qatar Party. And so right at the bottom of this statement, the Qatar Party says, the KAP team, so that's the Qatar Australian Party team, is the only party, and they actually have only here in all caps. The Qatar team is the only party in Parliament that is fully committed to standing up for the rights of the unborn at any stage of development. And then they finish by saying, we are resolved to be the voice for the precious voiceless. So, the Qatar Party is against euthanasia, they're against abortion, and they are, as they say in their own words, the only party in Parliament, particularly Queensland Parliament, that is fully committed to standing up for the rights of the unborn child at any stage. We're not talking about late term versus early term abortions. Qatar's party is just against abortions, full stop. They don't want to see any abortions. From the point of conception on, the Qatar party supports the life of the child. Just to pull that up, to go back to, we're just talking about the One Nation policy. What is interesting is that the One Nation policy actually starts by saying, One Nation acknowledges the scientific fact that a human life begins in the womb. So they don't necessarily say from conception here, but that One Nation is acknowledging that the child, the unborn child in the womb, is a human person. It is a human life. So what is most interesting by that is that One Nation says, yeah, we acknowledge that it's a human life, basically from conception onwards. And then they say, well, do you want to abort it? Say, not late-term abortions, but we're fine with early-term abortions. So One Nation is okay with aborting a human life as long as it's early in the pregnancy and as long as it's anaesthetized and stuff like that. So they are kind of still happy with taking a human life, which they themselves have acknowledged is a human life. They're not just saying, oh, it's just some random cells or it's just a this or a that, it can just be chucked away. They've actually said they acknowledge it to be a human life, and yet they still are in favour of abortions. They don't want late term, but they're happy with early term, and they have said that they're not going to criminalise abortion. Whereas the Qatar Party has said that they believe that the baby in the womb is a human life, a human person, basically from the point of conception, as I say, from any stage of development in the womb. They acknowledge it to be a person, and they are against killing it. They are against abortion in all forms. So, Cherish Life is correct. The Qatar Party is the most pro-life party in Australia. They are the most pro-life party in Queensland. And they are the only party in Parliament that is fully committed to doing away with abortion. They're the only party fully committed to standing up for the rights of the unborn child at any stage of development from conception to birth. Therefore, if you want to know who you should vote for at this upcoming election, you need to consider, are you pro-life? Are you anti-abortion? Do you support a party that will do away with abortion? And if the answer is yes to all those questions, then you need to vote Qatar, because the Qatar Party is the only party that is actually going to stand up for the right for the child at all stages. And now I don't like to get political per se, and I don't like to tell people who they should vote for. I mean, you can vote for any of these parties if you want. That's your free choice. That's the liberty you have in Australia, where you can vote for anyone. You want to vote for Labor and have, terrible abortion laws, go for it. I don't support that, but that is your free right to do so. I don't like telling people who they should vote for, but I'd like to inform people about the pro-life policies of each party and tell them that if they are fully committed to doing away with abortion, they need to vote for Qatar. Because a vote for the Greens or a vote for Labor is going to lead to worse euthanasia policies and worse abortion policies. A vote for the Liberal Nationals and One Nation will see some better abortion and euthanasia policies in Queensland, but both parties have said they are not going to do away with them full stop. They will not criminalise abortion. Again, they want to limit abortion, they want to restrict abortion, they want to put in all these safeguards, but they have said that they are committed to not recriminalising it. So whether you vote Labor, Greens, Liberal National or One Nation, you will still have abortion in Queensland. The only way we can get rid of abortion in Queensland is to have the Qatar Party become the government. Now, they're a minor party. They normally only win 2 seats. The last election, they managed to win a 3rd seat. So they're not a huge party. The chance of them actually forming government is unlikely. Maybe it will take 10, 20, 30 years before you could get a Qatar Party that could form government in Queensland. But the reality is that if you want a party that is going to oppose abortion and oppose euthanasia at all stages, you need to vote Qatar. They are the only party willing to stand up for the rights of the unborn child at any stage. They are the most pro-life party, and a vote for Qatar is a vote for the unborn. I've been your host, Reverend Jake Zabel. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I hope it's been informative and that you now know what the policies are for each party regarding pro-life issues. So goodbye, God bless, and vote responsibly.